In verse 1, and it came to pass after these things that God did tempt Abraham, and said unto him, Abraham, and he said, Behold, here am I. Where is he at? He's in Beersheba. He's counting on the promises of God. He's living on the promises of God. And that's a picture of us living on the promises of God. And so that's Abraham, the man of faith. And that's where God's now going to test him. That's what that means. God's going to tempt him. He's going to test him. Now, this is 17 years later, folks. 17 years have gone by. Remember when Isaac was born, that was last week, and Abraham was 100 years old when Isaac was born. Sarah was 90. This is 17 years later, and the boy is 17. You know? Keep that in mind. Okay. And he said, Take now thy son, thine only son, Isaac, whom thou lovest, and get unto the land of Moriah, and offer him there for a burnt offering upon one of the mountains which I will tell thee of. Look at Moriah. Remember how we've been dealing with maps. Moriah is just on the other side of Judah. You cross over into Benjamin. Remember how we said? Benjamin is the soul. Okay, so you cross, and here's another thing. Okay, whom thou lovest. And this is where the rubber meets the road, folks. How, when I became a Christian, I became a Christian November 20th. So that they were already singing all the Christmas carols for that year. And everybody was talking about giving people gifts and so on. And then one preacher says, what are you going to give Jesus this Christmas? And I thought, yeah, I need to give him something. What do I give him? What do I give him? And I had a beautiful camera, a Minolta SLR 101. I mean, I had bought that in Japan. I love that camera. And the thought came, give him the camera. I says, oh, good night. Give him my camera. And you know what, folks? There was a guy that was after me all the time. He says, sell me that camera. Sell me the camera. I says, no, it's not for sale. I love my camera. He says, oh, come on, Phil, sell me the camera. And when that thought came, I says, oh, boy, yes, I'm going to give the Lord the camera. So I called John. John, yeah, what's up? I says, you still want the camera? I says, yeah. I says, I'm selling it. Did you drop it? I said, no, I didn't drop it. I says, is anything wrong with it? I says, nothing's wrong with it. Do you want it or not? He says, yeah, don't tell anybody. I'll be right over. And he came right over. And I sold him the camera for $100. He says, why are you doing this? Are you short on money or something? I says, no, I'm just doing something, okay? Take it. So he took it, and I took that $100, and I sent it off to Lynchburg, Virginia, to the school over there. But you know what, folks? It's a good thing I did, because at the time, it was a very valuable camera. But if I brought that camera here right now, it's worthless. There's a lot better. Everybody's walking around with a better camera on their phones, But at the time, I'll never forget. What a good investment, What a neat thing. I'm so glad I did it. I did it. I gave the Lord a good camera, which is worthless now. But at the time, it happened. So whom thou lovest. And God is going to tell Abraham, that boy you love. Now with him, this is a really big investment. This is a really big thing. Because he's an old man, and God's given him all kinds of promise. And he says, he loved him. He must have loved him. He's 17 years old now, the boy. Now look at this. You get into the land of Moriah. And now watch it. This is very important, folks, because we're going to come back to this, and it'll haunt you. Haunt you if you didn't pay attention. That little word, one. Get and offer him there for a burnt offering upon one of the mountains which I will tell thee of. And he says, the land of Moriah up here. Okay? So, what does Moriah mean? To see Jehovah, the eternal God. That's what that means. Okay, now look at this. Why? He's got to be asking, why? Why does the Lord want me to sacrifice this boy? He's given me so many promises. Why does he want that? And Abram rose up early in the morning and saddled his ass and took 2 of his young men with him and Isaac his son and clave the wood for the burnt offering and rose up and went into the place of which God had told him. A burnt offering is you don't get nothing out of it. You know, and a burnt offering is when you give a $10 bill to a homeless person on the road, you're never going to see him again, chances are. You give him money, and so that's a burnt offering because you get nothing out of it. I mean, a peace offering is when you give him a $10 or you go out to eat with him, you know, and then he shares something with you. But in this case, you get nothing out of it. And so God says, you're not going to get anything out of it. And this is what this is, a burnt offering. So, and look at this. He rose up early in the morning. He's obedient. And this is the beauty of Abraham. And that's what he teaches us in the Bible. How soon do you need to do this thing? When God asks you to do something, do it as quickly as possible. Do it soon. Obey. Abraham obeys, okay? Then on the 3rd day, Abraham lifted up his eyes and saw the place afar off. Folks, that's a long place from Beersheba. That's 44 miles away because it took him 3 days, you know. If you're walking, you know, like 20 miles a day or 25 miles, and that's just not a plain. That's mountainous. You can't see it there as well, but that's a very mountainous area. So that took him three days to get there. And look at this. I put this picture in there because the night the Lord was he was going to be betrayed, he went into the garden to pray, and that was agony. You know, he was going through agony. And I can imagine Abraham is going through the same thing. Can you imagine 3 nights looking at this boy you love, and the Lord just told you, you're going to sacrifice him? It must have been a painful. I don't think he slept, knowing what he's going to do. And he probably didn't tell Sarah, because probably Sarah would have said, what? No, you're not going to do that. So he probably didn't tell her. And so it must have been agonizing those 3 nights. And then finally on the 3rd night or the 3rd day, he sees the place afar off. And Abraham said unto his young men, abide ye here with the ass, and I and the lad will go yonder and worship and come again to you. What? This is crazy talk. What does he mean? We're going to go over there and then come back to you. So he's already saying, he's already come to the conclusion, okay, I'm going to sacrifice the boy, but God's already made a lot of promises, so the only way out of this is he's going to raise him back from the dead, you know? He's talking resurrection. Way back then, that's what he's saying. He's saying, I'm going to sacrifice the boy, and God, because look at this. This is chapter 21. I'm jumping back just 2 verses to show you this. The Lord visited Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did unto Sarah as he had spoken. For Sarah conceived and bare Abraham a son in his old age at the said time of which God had spoken to him. So Abraham had already encountered that. God says something, and it gets done. So evidently what he said about Isaac is going to happen. I just don't know how it's going to happen, but it's going to happen. And we're told in the New Testament, look what we're told in Hebrews 11:19, accounting that God was able to raise him up, even from the dead, from whence also he received him in a figure. So see, we're told in the new Abraham, Isaac, this is what he was thinking. The whole time he's going up the mountain with this boy, he's got to be looking at him, a 17-year-old boy, and he's saying, that's my life. That's my everything. And I'm going to kill him. But God's going to raise him up. And so we're told that in Hebrews. So look at this. And Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering and laid it upon Isaac his son, and took the fire in his hand and a knife, and they went both of them together. That is a picture of the Lord. There's the wood, there's the knife, symbolism for the nails. It's a picture, and you got to get this, folks, because we're going to see how, in the Bible, when you're reading the Bible, it's a simple book. A third grader can read it. But you got to really bring your mind to it, because God goes underneath the Bible, another layer, and is telling you something else, okay? So this is the beauty of the Bible. It is deep, folks. Nobody has ever gone as far as it's too deep, you know? But I'm telling you, this is what you find in there. We're going up the mountain with the wood, and he's carrying the wood. He's carrying the cross. And look what it says. They both went together. When I saw that, I thought, does that mean that when Jesus was going up the mountain, his Father was there with him? That's what I get. The Lord was there. And Abraham, you're going to see, especially in the other chapters that follows, how Abraham becomes a picture of the Lord. Watch this. I'll show you. And Isaac spake unto Abraham his father, and said, My father. And he said, Here am I, my son. And he said, Behold the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering? So Isaac is saying, okay, we got everything here, but no lamb. Where's the lamb? And then when you read that, you jump immediately to the New Testament, where John says, Behold, and looking upon Jesus as he walked, he says, Behold the Lamb of God, who takes away the sins of the world. But see, the question is asked in the Old Testament, and it's answered by John. It's the beauty of the Bible, how it does that. And Abram said, My son, God will provide himself a lamb for a burnt offering. So they went, both of them together. There's that verse again. Anytime a phrase is repeated again, you pay attention to it. God will provide himself a lamb. I love it the way it's himself a lamb. I looked at the other Bibles, and look what they say. The NIV says, God himself will provide the lamb. The New American Standard says, God will provide for himself the lamb. They're different. In the King James, it says, God will provide himself a lamb. I like that better. Now, there's differences. And this is why, folks, this is why I love the King James, It's just clear. So they went, both of them together. There it is. Okay. Now, look at this. See, because I'm big on maps. And this is why I've been talking about maps the whole time. And they came to the place which God had told him of. And Abram built an altar there and laid the wood in order and bound Isaac his son and laid him on the altar upon the wood. They came to the place. There it is. Now, that's the place where the temple will one day be built. And remember when we met, he met Melchizedek. He met him right there at the border of Judah and Benjamin. This is the city of David. The city of David, he took it from the Jebusites. Jerusalem will one day encompass all of this. But for now, it's a little city. And this is the city of David. But up on the hill, that's where the temple will one day be built. Look at this. 2 Chronicles 3:1. Then Solomon began to build the house of the Lord at Jerusalem in Mount Moriah, where the Lord appeared unto David, his father, in the place that David had prepared the threshing floor Arnon the Jebusite. There was a guy that was living here in Jabus. That was the name of the city before it became the city of David. So Jabus, the people of Jabus are Jebusites. So there's a guy that lives here that owns this land, and he's got a threshing floor there. Okay? So that's where Solomon will build, because David bought that land from a Jebusite. So keep that in mind. But so Abraham came to there, but I don't think, remember what I said about early, one of the mountains? There's several mountains here, folks. This is the land of Moriah. So I believe that's the place where he sacrificed Isaac. Just a little beyond north, up there. That's where he sacrificed, because that's what Golgotha is. Golgotha is beyond, on the north side of the city. See, there's the east, there's the west, there's the north. Okay? Now look at this. This is the layout of the city. I was just there. I was there in May. Okay? Here's the mount. Here's the Temple Mount. This is the Kidron Valley that divides. And here's Golgotha. It's about a mile, maybe less than a mile, but you can walk it easy. I mean, we walked it several ways. Walked all over the place here. But there's Golgotha. Here's right about where right there. That's where the hill is, and the tomb is right there. So you can see this is west, east, north, south, and north. Okay? So I don't believe, now again, we're going to be looking at some of the layout of the Temple Mount to show you why I'm saying this. Okay? Okay, that is what you have there now. The Mosque of Omar. That's what's there. And that's a picture I took while I was there. But look at this, folks. Okay, there's the valley, the Kidron Valley, and see how it's built up. And here's the mosque. This place. This is the city of David down here. When I was there in '98, this is what was inside, but it was covered. It was topped. You went underneath it. This is inside the Mosque of Omar. See, I was able to go in there and go downstairs into this. This is where they claim that the rock upon where Isaac was slain. You know, and people are just pouring in there at the time. They don't let you go in there no more. I'm so glad that I was able to go in '98. But you go down there, and they have paid mourners. You know, a woman way in the corner over there crying, just crying all the time, crying. And it's like, I was there when they changed shifts. That's what they get. It's funny. They get paid for doing that. Paid mourners, you know. So here you have this woman at the corner crying. And I went in there, and there was a long line of people. It was just a long line, and we're all going down there, go around, and then go back up, and then go outside. And you had to take your shoes off in order to go in there. But now they don't even let you do that. Okay? So here's the layout. This is a drawing that I found. I don't know how correct this is, but see, here's the hill, Moriah, one of them. Okay? That's the point. There were several mounts. See, there's over here, and over here is this Mount of Olives. But look at where I believe that this is the rock where they believe that Isaac was sacrificed, and this is where the mosque is. But look at where the entrance to the temple, I believe, is not aligned. Because see, this is north. This is north over here. Okay, no, this is the valley. This is north over here. This is west. This is east, and that's south. But see, this is where I believe the temple was. So I don't believe that the mosque, which is there now, is right on top of them. And I'll show you. Look at this photo. I took that photo from the Garden of Olives, and see there. You can barely see the top. You can barely tell it. You can tell it better on the computer. But here's the top of the mosque. So it's not a line. See there? The temple would have been here. And there's the entrance, which is closed off. And the reason it's closed off, there's prophecy that the Lord is going to come. He's going to come right through the gate. And look what they put there, folks. That's a cemetery. That's a Muslim cemetery. They put it there so they want to prevent the Lord from walking in. Like that's going to stop him. That's not going to stop him. You know, when he comes, the way people think is crazy. Okay? And here's a model of the temple as well. See how it's aligned with the temple? That's a model. That's a Jewish model, and it's a big thing. The whole city. They moved it. I was asking this time when I went. I said, "Where's the?" They said they moved it to a museum now. This used to be outside. So you can tell it's outside. It's up on a hill, and it's huge. It's bigger than this layout, this room. But the temple it's a model, and you can see it right there. There's a fence, and you can see the whole model, the whole city. But I wanted to show you there. There's the entrance, and it's aligned right to the temple. So the mosque is like built over here, okay? And again, here's another image. Again, just to show you the entrance aligned to the temple. Okay, getting back to the story. Now, and Abram stretched forth his hand, took the knife to slay his son. Jesus said unto him, Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and with all thy soul and with all thy mind. This is in Matthew. So the Lord again shows us we're supposed to have one God, and we're supposed to love him at all costs. Nothing is supposed to be, and so this is what Abraham has proven. With the sacrifice of his son, he loved him a lot. And so he has proven this by doing this act. And he's going to do it. He's lifted the knife, and he's about to do it. And the angel of the Lord called unto him out of heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham. And he said, Here am I. And he said, Lay not thine hand upon the lad, neither do thou anything unto him, for now I know that thou fearest God, seeing thou hast not withheld thy son, thine only son, from me. So he stopped him right in the nick of time. He stopped. Thou hast not withheld thy son. God knew this. I mean, of course God knew the whole time. But Abraham didn't know if he was going to pull it through. He was going to come through, and he did. And now he will forever be changed, of course. Because he already believed God would do anything. But look what happens here. 13, and Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, behind him was a ram caught in a thicket by his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered him for a burnt offering instead of his son. Now, about 30 years ago, 35 years ago, I was teaching this class to children, little people. And I was telling them, and I says, and Abraham turned around, and there was a lamb caught in the bush. And a little boy, 5-year-old little boy, he lifted up his hand and I says, not now, Alan, let me finish the story. So I continue with the story. And he lifted up his hand again, and they were all sitting on the floor on little pillows. And he lifted up his hand again. I says, not now, Alan, let me finish the story. So I finished the story, and then I came back to him. I says, okay, Alan, now what was the question you had? And he says, Mr. Philip, it was not a lamb. It was a ram. I says, oh, good night. A little boy setting me straight. And it says, you're right. You're And you know what? The Lord was rebuking me. If you're going to tell the story, tell it right. It was not a lamb. It was a ram. And why is that important? Folks, it's very important. The difference between a lamb and a ram is very important. Because remember, we already dealt with this before when when God told him, give me these offerings. Bring a heifer, bring a goat, and bring a ram. And bring the animals, the dove and the pigeon. Why a ram? Well, if you look about us right now out there, there's a company that uses this as their brand, their logo. It's Dodge. Dodge uses a ram. You know why they use a ram? It stands for power. Wow. God says, the minute you obey God, the minute you give everything, because you are now saying, God, I don't know what you're doing, but whatever you're doing is right, and I'll do whatever you tell me to do. At that point in time, you have crossed over into resurrection power. You're now, that I may know him and the power of his resurrection, you now have entered into the power that everybody would like to have, and it's available to anybody when you're obedient. And that's what it's showing us here. The minute he crossed over, immediately there's the power. There's the ram caught in the thicket, and he offered it up to God. And that's why that verse will all of a sudden make a lot of sense to you, that I may know him. And you want to come to that point where you know him so well that you're obedient to God to the point where any things he asks, I mean, he is numero uno, and that's all there is. A lot of people say, yeah, I love God, but, they have reservations. Remember what Jesus says? Unless you hate mother, father, everybody, God's got to be number one. At that point in time, when you do that, you come into this kind of power. You become a prince with God. You have power with God. Okay. And Abraham called the name of that place Jehovah Jireh. And as it is said to this day, in the mount of the Lord it shall be seen. So that's what he called that place, Jehovah Jireh. What does that mean? The Lord will provide, but I like this better. God will provide himself a lamb. That's where God is going to do it. He's going to do it right there. Where he was going to sacrifice, but God is going to provide himself a lamb right at that place. And the angel of the Lord called unto Abraham out of heaven the second time and said, by myself have I sworn, says the Lord, for because thou hast done this thing and hast not withheld thy son, thine only son. Wow, this is fantastic. God says, you have done this. You're now on another level, That in blessing thee, I will bless thee, and in multiplying thee, I will multiply thy seed. Here he was concerned for one boy that he was going to kill. God says, I'm going to multiply him. I'm going to multiply your seed. That's your seed on the altar. You just offered. God says, all of a sudden. And isn't that true, folks? You can, if you take one kernel of corn and you plant it, one kernel, it's like you plant it on the ground, you cover it with dirt, you inter it, you bury it, and all of a sudden, out of it come a whole plant that gives you many, many kernels of corn. That plays out in nature. And in thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed, because thou hast obeyed my voice. So Abraham returned unto his young men, and they arose and went together to Beersheba, and Abraham dwelt at Beersheba. Isn't it amazing how the Lord just repeats it again and again? He says, where are they going? To Beersheba. Where are you going to live? At Beersheba. What's Beersheba? Beersheba is where the promises. He's gone back to the well, and Beersheba means the well of promises, the well of oath. He's going to live on the promise. He hasn't seen it. He didn't get to see all the seed, multiplication of the seed, but we know that it happened. He multiplied. The seed was multiplied. because look at how big the Jerusalem is, or Israel is right now, and that's all from this boy. So he went to Beersheba, and he dwelt at Beersheba, the well of oath. And that well stands for the promises, the Bible, the Word of God. Okay, and it came to pass after these things that it was told Abraham, saying, Behold, Milcah, she has also borne children unto thy brother Nahor. We're going to stop here, folks. Watch this. Okay, so we're told Abraham now the boy's getting old. This time is passing. The last time we saw him in Moriah, he's 17. And now we're told, and she has had Huz, his firstborn, and Buz, his brother, and Kemuel, the father of Aram, and she said, I want to call him Cheesehead, but she said, and Hasso, and Pildash, and Jitleph, and Bethuel. And Bethuel begat Rebekah. These 8 Milcah did bear to Nahor, Abram's brother, and his concubine, whose name was Reumah. She bare Teba, and Gaham, and Thahash, and Maacah. 12 sons come from this, folks. Here we are. Here's Abram and Sarah. They have Isaac. Here's Nahor. Nahor has Milcah. Milcah has 8 boys. And Bethuel has Rebekah. And we're told about Amram. We're not going to touch that upon right now. And then he has another woman, a concubine. And she, between him and her, they have 4 boys. And these are the 4 boys. You count them all, they're 12. Ishmael has 12 boys. Isaac is going to have 2 boys. But those 2 boys, Jacob is going to have 12 boys. There's so much there, folks. But look at this. Rebekah is going to marry Isaac. Okay, we're going to end it right there. But look at this.